Hello to everyone and welcome to Michigan Aquatics. What you are looking at right now is Bill the Bullfrog. Bill is an American bullfrog from the state of Michigan. I've had him for just a little bit under 2 years, and I just wanted to tell a little bit of his story, which luckily I got him with the hopes of starting this channel again, so I've got it all on video. So this is the story of Bill the American Bullfrog, from beginning to now, because he is not yet finished, and I hope that he not to be finished for the next 10 to 15 years. Here we can see a video in a square box of the first bullfrog paludarium setup I made. This was in my old room in this house in a 40-gallon breeder, which worked well for him for a while. As we can see here, this is my first ever clip of Bill. Isn't he just adorable? He's something else. I completely forgot how little he was and what he sounded like back then. It just makes me happy to hear him. But you can see Ivy here and Bill here. They were going after my katydid. While a 40-gallon breeder is not even close to a good tank size for the American Bullfrog, it's all that I could afford at the time, and I really wanted to get these guys as early as possible because I knew I would have to work with them for a long time. Now, despite what you might know of Bill now, Ivy was actually the lead aggressor of this tank for a long time. It was so bad that I started getting worried that maybe Bill was not as much of a genetic specimen as I had previously thought. For a few months over the summer of 2024, I was thinking about getting rid of Bill, because if he can't put up with a female bullfrog of similar age and size, then, what is he going to grow into? But it turns out I believe Ivy might have just been a little bit older than Bill, because now Bill's come around a ton, and he's huge. In all of these clips, these guys were around 4 to 4.5 inches in length, and they're so cute when they're this small. I remember looking at them, back in that day, and thinking they were the biggest, toughest animals, and now looking at them, comparing them to what they look like today, it's nothing. The biggest thing with these bullfrogs was creating an environment in an aquarium where they could both coexist and both feel happy and comfortable. Right here we can see Bill starting to come around just a little bit, going after Ivy a little bit more, gaining some confidence, gaining some strength, feeding him. Because of Ivy, feeding him was really difficult for a while. He was scared of me. Ivy would always pick on him, but what we're about to see here is one of the final iterations of the 40-gallon breeder bullfrog tank. You can see there's only like a few inches of water in there, There's not much going on for him. Here, I believe this to be the last iteration, and you can see how happy Bill looks in this last iteration of the tank. I put a lot of work into this 40 breeder for what a 40 breeder can be, but by this point I knew that it was about time to change it up a little bit, to give him a new habitat. This is the last iteration of the 40 breeder that we're seeing here. Doesn't it look good? This was the inspiration for the first creation with the 75-gallon aquarium. It was very similar to this kind of a setup, and what we will see not right now. We'll see that still in a minute. I just wanted to include as many clips of this 40 breeder so you can see that it is possible to keep these frogs in a 40 breeder and have them be happy and comfortable as long as upgrades are coming in the future. Look at these colors that we can see Bill displaying here. This tan coloration, it's a very new and interesting one that I've seen on bullfrogs. And it's more similar to the color he was when I caught him, which was the biggest reason I kept him, because he's from a pine woodland, which is a very weird habitat for a bullfrog. So his colors are reminiscent to that of this pine woodland. Usually a yellow base with sort of this iridescent bright duckweed green and yellow and red on his legs. Just a very unique and interesting looking frog. Now here you can see this large glass rectangle on the floor. That is the 75-gallon aquarium, the same one that Diablo was in. And here I show the supplies I plan on using to decorate this 75-gallon for the bullfrogs. And after about 3.5, 4 hours of work, we get this. Isn't it wonderful? This is the first iteration of the 75-gallon bullfrog aquarium. You can clearly see there's more water, more room overall. The foliage is a little differently placed. Just look at how happy they were. Now, I did have to put a couple of green frogs in here, which were some OGs for my frog keeping of 2024. Eventually, they were eaten, but that doesn't matter. What matters is Bill and Ivy are now in the 75-gallon aquarium. And this was just the first iteration, and it looked really good. My hope was to bring all of their wood and stuff higher up and to make their water level higher as well to accommodate for their growth. After a little while, they started to become more and more comfortable with me, more so than they ever had in the 40 breeder. And I started noticing a lot more growth from them as well. And we come here to a more recent variant of the 40 breeder. This was the first big revamp I did in June of 25, where I put that raising the water level up and bringing their wood and stuff up to life. Frog. This also happens to be when Bill changed. Oh! Bill happened to really, really love this setup here, and it brought his confidence level up. You can see him in the right corner there with his chin up, and right here. This is a confident, dominant sort of posture where he's got his chin facing up, he's got his body held above the water. He's showing that this is his area, and he rules this land, or I guess water. Some more very interesting colors I started to see come out of Bill after adding him to this tank. He's starting to get these black spots all over his back, looking very unique and interesting. These clips here all come from July of 2025, or at least these ones with these colors. July seemed to be the peak for Bill's breeding season specifically, which is a little bit later in the year for the American Bullfrog, but I assume it's likely partially because he's still a young frog. He's getting older now, he's getting bigger, he's a ton bigger than these clips. You know, now he wouldn't even really be able to sit on this lily pad. Here's another little bit of a darker pastel shade of greenish brown that he's got going. Such a handsome man, isn't he? Then here's this sort of yellowish tan with a green head. It's hard with this camera that I recorded the video with to see his nice green head, but he's all of those little ridges and his lips are a nice bright green, kind of like the lily pads, but more on the yellow spectrum of color. At this point, those ridges around his tympanums or his eardrums were really becoming pronounced, which is kind of when I started to feel like he was really starting to mature, because those were nowhere near as pronounced when I got him. I was so happy on this day when I filmed these clips because it was the first time I could really see Bill behaving more like a bullfrog should. It showed me that I was doing something right, and I just needed to continue doing this to make things better and better. One of the big problems with this tank is the wood, because having wood in your water creates tannins, and this isn't treated wood. This is wood that's just from outside in my woods or from down the road or wherever I brought it back from. So there's a bunch of crap in it, and it took a while to get it to where it seemed to be aquarium safe. But it didn't address the problems with the tannins, and I know there's things that I can buy that I can put in the water that'll help to thicken the tannins so they get caught in the filter, but I just didn't want to mess with any of that. I figured my best bet and cheapest bet was going to be to get as much of the wood that's in the water above the water line as possible. But before we can even get to that part, here's what it looked like after a water change with the tannins. There were still a ton of tannins in the water, but the main reason for this clip are these guys. You might not recognize these little tiny sunfish, but these are the same pumpkin seeds, green sunfish, and pumpkin green sunfish hybrids that are in the 75 today. They've grown a ton and they've gotten beautiful. The conditions in this tank have made a lot of very shiny iridescent colors come out. Here's Bill. There's Ivy. So this is after I was able to raise more wood above the water line and help the tannins a little bit. I thought maybe that's not what it was, but as we can see now, it kind of is. But you can see these tannins. Look at how bad the tannins were in that water. It really should not be that dark in there. And in return, Bill's coloring turned dark as well. I tried adding as much greenery as I could to make his color appear brighter green or at least tan or yellow, but because of the tannins in the water, he always chose this blackish brown color, which still looks really good on him. I still really love the look of this Bill. Oh my God, Bill. But it was ugly to look at, and the acidity made it more difficult for the fish, even though the fish I had in there are more used to acidic waters, being they kind of come from already acidic waters around here. You can see, here's the creek chubs. This is not long after I added them in. They were even smaller than that. There's one of the hybrids. I think we still have this one. I originally added 7 juvenile sunfish to this tank. And then the 2 larger pumpkin seeds I added later. Everything, even the green, has a tint of this orangish brown, and it shouldn't. And I hated it. It had to change. I've got some more clips of just how bad it was. Look, this is when I started trying to raise the water level up to see how my wood was going to float, what its buoyancy was going to be, so I could figure out what the safest route would be to raise it up. Look at here. Tannins are getting a little bit better. You can see our wood is higher above the water line. The water's a little bit more clear and clean. I can actually film the tank from farther away, and you can kind of see a little bit more going on, but the tannins are still horrendous. So now we are maybe over midway through 2025, here with this clip. When I was finally starting to get an idea on what I could do to help out these tannins in this tank. This, I believe, is the first clip after I did the changes. You can see that extra piece of wood up there. That likely means I have the second filter in there. And voila! Here we have the 75-gallon looking more similar to how it does today. Nice and clear water, nice and clear Bill. There he is. There's Bill. I forgot where whatever. Look at this. How much better does that look? This is what I more had envisioned for the 75 when I set it up. And it's so great that I've been able to do it. I have 2 filters in there. I have a large Repto filter and then a slightly smaller decorative Repto filter and an air pump in there just to help with water circulation. Now this clip here, we're getting near to the end of Bill's journey. You can see him in the background. This is more similar to how it is right now. This clip is from like a couple weeks ago, but the tank still looks pretty much the same. Just as beautiful as ever. There's enough tannins in there for you to see and understand that it's more of an acidic environment, replicates a pond or a swamp environment with the creek chubs and how clear the water is. It's a spring-fed or creek-fed pond or swamp. It's a really interesting dynamic, and I'm glad everything does so well together in the setup. I was really nervous when I was just getting it going. It took a while to get it to where it is now, and it only gets better. Hello, Bill. You look really awesome, too.
Is that so?
And that pretty much summarizes Bill's 2 year journey into 16 minutes and 7 seconds of footage. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did enjoy the story of Bill, make sure you go check him out now. He's a lot different now, a lot prettier. He's got a lot more attitude and personality. See y'all in the next one. Fish on.